Hello there and welcome back to another video. In this one we're gonna talk about 6 ways you can stop feeling lonely after a breakup. Now to be fair, while I think the principles or the ways I'm going to share in this video will work for just about everyone, for you to actually get results with them, you need time and you need consistency of application. You need to apply them many times in your life to actually see their benefits. And also, you just need to let a certain amount of time pass post breakup. Now, what does this mean in practice? This means that whether you apply these principles or not, maybe you find some other ones that are just as useful, maybe even more, who knows, you're still looking at probably a multiple months road to recovery, to feeling less lonely. This is simply the nature of the beast, and the sooner you accept it, the easier it will be to wrap your head around the whole concept and how to overcome it. Now, just a side note, if you want to go deeper into breakup recovery in general, I urge you download my recovery cheat sheet, link in the description down below this video. It's gonna help you a lot when it comes to healing faster. But anyway, let's go back to our main thing. The first principle that I want to share with you is really simple. Find a group, any sort of community, and participate in it. Probably the best bet for your money is gonna be joining some sort of a grief recovery group. That's what I've done, that's what many people have done, and the results were pretty extraordinary. Now I get it, maybe you're an introvert, maybe you don't find that too appealing, but look, I was an introvert as well, and when I was going through my breakup, even I didn't find this tip appealing, yet I've stuck with it, as did many other people, and we are all now glad that we've actually done so. We've actually built up the courage to go into a random, usually unknown group and find friends there and find people who are going through the same shit that we were going through. So how do you find such a group? Well, I think the best bet is to just type something like breakup or grief recovery group in my area into Google, see what results pop up. You can also ask around your local school or college grounds if they maybe offer such a group. Like, I don't know about your place, where I'm from, we had this. I actually found a free group of volunteers who actually wanted to be there, which was mainly based for people who were going through difficulties such as a breakup, to get together, to help each other out, to get someone on the other side who will listen to us and stuff like that. Really great experience. In general, look for groups that are participatory. So, generally speaking, the more active the group is, the better. This has been proven time and time again by actual studies as well. You want to look especially for groups that incorporate some sort of a physical activity in them also, in addition to general discussions. So I'm saying stuff like gymnastics, swimming, hiking, dancing perhaps, singing. Anything that's not just sitting around and, twiddling your thumbs. Those groups are proven to produce wildly superior results to groups where everyone just sits around and acts all passive. Now, I understand that you might not be lucky enough to stumble upon a real-life grief breakup recovery group. However, don't worry, you can always go and find groups like that online. And yes, the research actually backs this up as well. Online groups work just as well as in real-life groups. Granted, however, you participate in it daily, you participate in it basically often, you participate in it not just with the mindset of what advice can I get from these people, however also with the mindset of what advice can I give to these people. So for the tech savvy people out there, my go-to picks and how I personally also overcame my breakup, go to Facebook, go to Reddit, and there you'll find pretty decent groups or communities where you can meet people who are having the exact same issue as you. Now, the second principle for overcoming loneliness that I want to share is improving your social skills. And this kind of builds up on the last one. Naturally, just getting into any sort of a recovery group or just about any group, right? And that's not enough. You need to talk with people in that group. And this is where social skills come in. Social skills allow us to build deep connections and intimacy with other people, and they make us ultimately form lasting friendships and even romantic partnerships. Now, how do you go about practicing social skills? I'll probably make eventually a video talking about this subject as well. However, for now, to give you a few basic tips, right? If, for example, you're right now introverted, you're not really confident, you don't have much social skills, a really good way to start would be by simply making eye contact with the people you encounter in your day-to-day life. When you're comfortable with that, maybe you've, let's say, went on a few strolls for a few hours and you're kind of okay with it. Maybe try smiling as well when you make eye contact. And when you even feel comfortable with that, maybe add a greeting into the mix, saying something like, "Hey, how's it going?" or "Good day we're having." Just something that you naturally say. Feel free to experiment with it. Do whatever works for you. Just put some greeting in there as well. Now, all that's left is to repeat these steps, I guess, until you're comfortable with all of them. And look, you'll never be completely comfortable if you're a natural introvert like me, for example, with these things, and that's fine. You want to just aim for being moderately comfortable. And I know this is a very vague subjective term, but I think that if you feel into it, you can pretty much pinpoint where your threshold is. Now, how do you build up on that? Well, start asking for advice and for opinions. Basically, start asking people around you questions and be genuinely curious that you are genuinely curious about. Now, if you're not comfortable yet to, for example, ask strangers, like complete strangers, questions, there is a workaround. And the workaround is, think of a question you'd like to ask and maybe ask a clerk about it. Their job is to answer questions, so you might be more comfortable in that scenario because it's going to be just way more natural. And after weeks of repeating steps 1 and 2, you can then move on to the main thing, small talk. Now, this small talk means conversations about news and weather and travel, small, unimportant, usually trivial matters. However, that's usually just the starting point. You want to eventually go into the more emotionally heavy topics like life dreams and goals and trauma and deep-seated fears and insecurities. Obviously, going from point A to point B, from small talk to deep and meaningful conversations, it's a long process. It's not a process you just come in 5 minutes of conversing with a person, and you need to be a little bit more comfortable to actually come to that point. However, as long as you practice these 3 tips, as long as you practice and refine your social skills and improve upon them, I think it's only a matter of time before you arrive at that point where you are able to build these sorts of really deep and meaningful connections with people. And another third principle that also kind of builds on top of the other ones, you need to dare to be vulnerable. Now, being vulnerable, this refers to the ability to open up, to speak your mind, and share things about yourself and your life that you maybe have not shared before and that you perhaps feel uncomfortable about sharing them. That's possibly, as paradoxical as it sounds, one of the most effective ways you can build emotional connections with people, because ultimately people, they are not attracted to one another romantically or platonically based on the fact of your perfections. People are usually attracted to each other's rough edges, not the perfections. Now, there is a caveat here that I want you to keep in mind. There is a difference between toxic vulnerability and healthy vulnerability. Toxic vulnerability is the equivalent of overexpression. It's the result of lousy emotional management. So the point is, if you go on a 2-hour-long rant, for example, about how your ex is a bitch and how the world is not fair for throwing you in the maw of a breakup, that's probably toxic vulnerability. Healthy vulnerability is pointing out your ex's flaws in, let's say, a few seconds, and then not taking it personally, not whining about it, not moping about it, but maybe just asking the other person for his opinion, maybe for his advice on dealing with people with the same shitty qualities. Healthy vulnerability, therefore, is simply when you take responsibility for your fuck-ups and for the things that happened in your life, even if they are not your fault. While toxic vulnerability is usually just refers to playing the victim, moping around, and just whining in general. Now, moving forward to principle number 4, it's all about having the right intentions. Many people, they're gonna approach breakup recovery groups with the wrong ones. Instead of thinking, for example, how can I help others, they think, how can I help myself? Similarly to what I shared previously about you simply seeking advice, never really giving it. And look, to be fair, there's nothing wrong about wanting advice or listening ear, right? But it is wrong if that's your sole intention, only intention for joining a specific breakup support group or just support group in general, because you're doing it an enormous disservice. By focusing only on your wants and needs and what you can get out of the whole thing, you're completely missing out on the opportunity to connect with other people. And interestingly, if you don't connect with them, there is a good chance that you will not stop feeling lonely, that your loneliness will not diminish, or at least not as fast as it would if you'd put yourself out there and actually participated in effective and productive dialogues. So please, keep your intentions in check, keep them healthy and beneficial for other people as well. It's not all about you, always keep this in mind. It's about all of you guys in your community, growing and healing. Now, talking about our next principle, it's to just keep perspective in mind. Every time you're lonely, every sort of pain and heartache that you feel will eventually fade away into nothingness. And sure, there's a bunch of ways you can engage in breakup recovery, one of them being downloading my cheat sheet. Below this video is a link in the description. However, even if you do literally nothing, you will still feel eventually better about yourself. And if this loneliness that you're feeling right now isn't something that you're struggling with for your whole life, if this is something that you started to just struggle with after your breakup, there's a good chance that loneliness will dissipate eventually, regardless of what you do. However, there are a few things to keep in mind that will slow down the process, a few mistakes, to put it another way. You don't want to, for example, start stalking your ex. You don't want to call and text them all the time. You don't want to write and send them cringeworthy letters. Then there's also flushing your Facebook feeds with cringeworthy inspirational quotes and emotional posts about your breakup. Like, just don't do that. It's something that is very needy, very desperate, and it will not help your mental health. It will, at worst, reopen your breakup wounds, and you're gonna have to deal with a bunch of other emotional stuff all over again. Now, the last tip I want to give you, the last principle, is to simply learn to enjoy the solitude. As unorthodox, as paradoxical as it sounds, feeling lonely can be a good thing if you learn to bend your perspective the right way. Most people, for example, are afraid of solitude. They get anxious when thinking about it, and they often retaliate against it. And then they make everything worse for themselves. But there is no other way to approach the whole thing. You need to find a way to Enjoy your solitude by altering the meaning you ascribe to it. So, what I mean by this is simply change your mind and change the story around your solitude. You could think about it as a painful source of loneliness, right? Sure, that mindset is going to produce a lot of loneliness. However, you can also think about it as an opportunity for personal growth, as a breakup inherently is. An enlightening time of reflection, for example. In other words, you don't need to so much eliminate loneliness, you need to embrace and learn from it instead. Adopt this latter perspective. Accept that it's there, but it doesn't have to mean the destructive and unhealthy things you are allowing it sometimes to perhaps mean to you. And this kind of brings us to the end, to the final statement about all this stuff. Feeling lonely after a breakup is not the end. As horrible as it is, right? As horrible as feeling chronic loneliness is, as bad it is for your mental health, for your emotional and spiritual health, it can be surmounted. And these are just some of the principles and some of the tips that I found over the years that I know work best. So that's it. If you want to go even deeper into recovery, be sure to download my recovery cheat sheet, link in the description down below, and I'll see you in the next video. Take care.